Hi everybody. This is block one for our branches of government units called Congress and the House. And hopefully you've got your notes ready to go. If not, they should be on our Google Classroom page. So remember, when you're taking notes from this, we're just going to be going through and filling in the blanks of any notes. And I'll be sure to point that out as we go. So let's get rolling. Here we go. So the first thing I'd have you do is, before we start, is just think about an issue that would affect like all Americans that you can think of. And here's some examples right over here, like immigration reform, medical marijuana, healthcare, police brutality, whatever you think the tax rate should be, cost of college, or even like free college. So I want you to take a minute to think about it. If you need to pause the video, go ahead, and then write that down in the top left-hand corner of your notes. We're going to be going back and referring to this topic so that you can know exactly kind of what's going to be relevant for you as we move through learning about Congress, and for this one in particular, the House of Representatives. So hopefully you got something written down, so let's get started, see what this first block is all about. So in our last unit, we talked about kind of the formation of American government. We left off with the three branches, the legislative, executive, and judicial. We're going to be focusing on the legislative branch for this particular block, and specifically we're going to be looking at the House of Representatives. But before we do that, just a quick refresher of what each branch, kind of the description of what it does, on some of the powers it has over the other branches in terms of like checks and balances. So the legislative branch, what is it? So the primary job of the legislative branch, as said by the Constitution, is to create the laws for the entire United States of America. So if we look, the House of Representatives in particular and the Senate make up the Congress. It consists of 435 members. The Senate has 100. And in Article 1 of the Constitution is where Congress essentially gets its powers, and it goes on to describe it. So let's take a minute to look at the powers of Congress. And there it is again. It creates the laws that apply to the entire nation. So what does Congress do according to the Constitution? Well, it does a bunch of things. One of the first ones is that it creates and collects taxes. So Congress is essentially responsible for deciding how much it's going to spend and how much it's going to tax, but also how much it's going to borrow. Let's see here. It also pays for whatever it does with the tax money it collects. It also pays for our national defense, including the Navy. And it also borrows money to pay for a lot of stuff. And the United States, as I'm sure you know, borrows a lot of money. It not only borrows from foreign governments, but it borrows from a lot of U.S. citizens too. There's a fun little video in here if you click on it that I'm also going to post to the Google Classroom page. It kind of pokes fun of how much the United States government borrows. So yeah, this is at the debt limit video. So if you want to take a minute to watch this, I'll have you check that out through the Google Classroom video. But we're going to stick to the PowerPoint. Along. Alright, so what else does Congress do? It assures uniform rules of commerce. Essentially, Congress gets to decide rules around like immigration, who becomes an admitted to the United States, so on and so forth. It also works with bankruptcies. It also does a lot around patents and things like that. What else does Congress do? Coins money, basically makes it, regulates its value, as well as punishing for counterfeiting. It also does this thing, standardized weight measures, which we'll get to in a little bit. And then here's a list of just some of the other things that it does. Specifically, establishing post offices. You want to make sure you take a minute to write that down. Like I said earlier, granting patents and copyrights, creating courts, just kind of zooming through, declaring war, and ultimately making laws necessary to carrying out these things. So there's a word for these powers that are, watch my fingers, specifically listed in the Constitution. They're called the enumerated or express powers, and they are the powers listed in the Constitution. Everybody see where to write that listed word down? So take a minute to jot that down. So again, these powers that are in the Constitution, actually go up and put your finger on them. They are known as the enumerated or express powers, and they essentially say exactly what Congress can do. It's pretty detailed. Established post office, so we know that it's up to Congress to be in charge of getting post offices rolling. Now we're going to take a minute to look at a different kind of power listed in the Constitution, which is known as implied powers. So implied powers of Congress are, the best way I like to describe them is that they're like directly tied to your enumerated or express powers. So I'm just going to use the post office example. If it says in the Constitution that Congress is going to create a post office, and you look here, then you'll see that the express power is to establish the post office. The implied power are the specific details that are not written down in the Constitution that most people assume the Founding Fathers would have wanted. For example, if you have it say that you have to create the post office in the Constitution, that's easy enough to write in the Constitution. However, they didn't necessarily write what happens if somebody gets their mail stolen. And so that would be an example of an implied power where later on lawmakers essentially are like, what do we think the Founding Fathers would have wanted to happen if somebody stole somebody's mail? What do we think would be fair? They should probably get a fine and maybe even make it a felony so that people won't steal mail. And they wrote this down, and that's essentially what an implied power is. It's basically what we imply the Founding Fathers would have wanted. So make sure you get that specific details not written in the Constitution jotted down. And here's some other examples of your express enumerated powers and the implied powers that come out of those. All right, so moving on, let's get into the nitty-gritty, the House of Representatives. House of Representatives, that we learned in the last unit, essentially came out of this compromise and was pretty much based on the population of a state. To become a House of Representative member, you have to be 25 years old. You serve for 2 years terms, so you're constantly on the go with running for re-election and getting re-elected. There's no term limits, meaning you can just run and run and run, and in fact a lot of House members do this. And there's a chunk, 435 to be exact. And again, it's based on the population of the state, so make sure you get that base written down. If you're going to make a law in the House of Representatives, you need 218 votes to get the majority. If you want to get 2/3, which sometimes you need 2/3, and we'll talk about this as the unit goes on, you would need 290 total votes. And the leader is known as the Speaker of the House, and that's pretty much it. We'll talk a little bit more about the Speaker of the House in just a minute, but just so you guys know, I'm going to bop forward and then I'm going to kind of come back. If you look at this map of Colorado, you can see that we actually have 7 representatives for the state of Colorado based on our population. So our population is so big that we get 7. It's nothing like California that has 53, but it's still a chunk. We have, I'm not sure exactly how many people live in Colorado. I'm going to guess like maybe like 6 million would be my guess. But based on that number, you can see that they've kind of split Colorado up into what we would call 7 districts. District 1 would be like where I'm kind of sitting right now in kind of the Denver metro area. And where you guys would be, District 7 is kind of right over here, and that's what we're going to go back to right now. So you officially live in Westminster in House District 7. So make sure you write that down. And your actual representative who represents you is a gentleman by the name of Ed Perlmutter. And I have a video on this, which I'm going to click so you can kind of see it.
Hi, my name's Ed Perlmutter. Welcome to the 7th Congressional District and our website for the 7th CD. As you can see, I represent a beautiful area from the mountains of Jefferson County, the foothills here in the background, to the plains of Adams County. This is a place where people really love their state, love where they live. We have good schools. We really work hard at being good citizens. It's as good a place as it gets to live, to raise a family, to work. And I feel very fortunate, very honored to be able to represent my community, my neighbors, my family in the Congress of the United States. And we look forward in our office to working with you, to hearing from you about your concerns, about problems you may face or ideas you might have to, make the 7th CD a better place or the country a better place. We look forward to hearing from you.
Okay, so there you go. There's your representative. So Ed Perlmutter represents you. He takes trips to Washington D.C. and he tries to do his best to essentially take his what we would call constituents, represent them in Washington D.C. So Ed is like on his way a lot of times going to Washington D.C. representing us, coming back to Westminster, meeting with all kinds of people, just trying to find out what it is that our values are, what we care about, and then taking that and representing us in Washington D.C. As a part of the 435 people in the House of Representatives. Interesting fact about Ed Perlmutter is that he's actually been at Westminster High School a bunch of times, including he worked very closely with Westminster High School to create a documentary that's called Medic. That's also on Google Classroom. If you want to check that out, it's like 50 minutes long. It's really well done, and it's amazing because it's our like Westy students and staff, you guys that are that worked really hard to make this, and it's really pretty incredible. It's definitely pretty intense in some of the scenes, so just beware that you're getting into some pretty heavy-duty material, but definitely pretty incredible that he was able to work with us. So that's your representatives for the House of Representatives. And again, as you can see, this is the 7th district where that happens. So let's look at this. So there are, I got a little cut off there, 435 members based on the population of the states. So this gives you a good idea of what states have the most representatives. So here we are in Colorado. We get 7 total based on our population. And then look at gigantic California over here. It's like a monster, 53 members in the House of Representatives. And then if you look at Texas, is also a gigantor or two with 36. A lot of people live in Texas, Florida, and also New York. So this gives you an idea of the bigger states. So you can see some of the smaller population states. Like if you look at your South Dakota, or your Wyoming, or your Montana, they only have 1 based on their population. So put all these together, if we were to go through and count, we'd come out with 400 and some odd members. And that's a kind of a cool visual so you can see it. This is another view. This comes from the, I think this was the 2012 election, but this is a cartograph, and it shows the size of our country based on the actual numbers. So you can see that our tiny states, population-wise, like Montana, Wyoming, North and South Dakota, are pretty mini, but if you look at these states like Florida and California and Texas, Pennsylvania and New York, they're pretty large. So just a different kind of view that you can check out. So we talked about the Speaker of the House before. Let's get into it now. The Speaker of the House is directly represented by, or I should say, the Speaker of the House is picked by the majority party. So if it's the majority party's Democrats in the House of Representatives that year, then they get to pick the Speaker of the House. If it's the majority is the different party, then they get to pick. So if you look at this picture right here, you can see that here we have President Obama, Vice President Joe Biden, and this was in 2008 when this woman right here, her name is Nancy Pelosi. She was the Speaker of the House in 2008. Now flash forward to the year 2017. As we know, and P.S. These were all Democrats, but specifically the House of Representatives in 2008, the majority of people were Democrats, and so they picked their leader to be Nancy Pelosi, who's also a Democrat. Flash forward to the year 2017, and you can see it's almost like the exact flip. Now we have essentially Donald Trump, new president, Vice President Pence, and the Speaker of the House currently, who's Paul Ryan. And he's Republican, so now we know the majority of the House of Representatives is Republican, and they decided to essentially select him. He accepted, and he is now the new Speaker of the House. So that's essentially how they get picked, and they're pretty important people. They help run the House of Representatives, especially for their party, and they are third in line to the president. So if something happens to the president or the vice president, they're the ones that take over. So they're, I guess you could say, 2 heartbeats away from the presidency. All right. So now we're going to get into a quick little technical term. They're known as whips. Now, the whips don't actually carry whips, but this image of them whipping isn't too much of a stretch because their job is to make sure their party votes together. that they're a cohesive unit. So if you look, based on this picture right here, you can see the majority of House members are Republican. So that means they pick a person known as the majority whip. So this person for the Republicans would be the Republican majority whip, and their number one job is to make sure that all these red guys, the Republicans, are all voting together in like a united front. Just like the majority whip does this for Republicans, currently Democrats are the minority, but they also pick a whip as well. So the minority whip has the same exact job. We're all voting together, okay? I mean business. I'm not sure exactly what they do to try and get everybody to vote together, but that would be my best guess. You guys better vote together. Hey, let's all vote together. Who knows what it actually looks like, but that is the job description. All right, moving along. Reapportionment, redistricting. So, when I was a little kid learning about the House of Representatives, I thought that as our country got bigger and bigger and bigger and got more and more people, that they just kept adding numbers, like 4 or 5, and that they would keep going. Like in the future, in the year 2100, that we would have like 1,000 people in the House of Representatives. Boy, was I wrong. That is not really what happens. I'm not sure exactly when, but at a certain point, essentially the House of Representatives maxed out. I think it's just kind of because the room couldn't fit any more people. Plus, have you ever heard the expression, too many cooks in the kitchen? I think they just thought that maybe would be too many people. So it's capped at that number. However, every 10 years we do this thing called the census, and in the census they actually count how many people are in all the states. And then if there's people that are leaving certain states, or if there's populations that are getting larger, they will actually, watch my fingers, shift representatives from one state to another state. And that's exactly what has happened over the last, like, I don't know, maybe like 20, 30 years. You can see that there have been a lot of people that have left states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, Illinois, even Ohio, and they are shifting to other places like Florida, even Colorado, Arizona, and California. So essentially what's happening here is people are leaving these places right here, and they are moving to these places, or just these states' populations are growing at a faster pace than these. And so when they do the census, basically they say, hey, you guys used to have this many people, but now you don't. So you're going to lose one, and Colorado, you're going to gain one. So let's just use Colorado as an example. We used to only have 6, but after enough people left, we got an extra one. Chang, chang, we got bumped up to 7. So that's what reapportionment is. It's this shifting representation. Now then you get into this problem of if we have an extra representative, then you already have like these borders of who's going to represent what part of Colorado, then all of a sudden you have to like redraw the lines, and there's a word for that known as, watch my fingers, redistricting. So redistricting is where you redraw the lines to basically squeeze in the new person. Now, here's where things get interesting. There was this dude named Jerry, and if you look on your notes, there's a picture of this like scary, crazy, it looks like almost like a lizardy salamander, and this creature was created by this guy named Jerry. And what happened is he actually figured out that if you draw the borders of your state a certain way, you can actually get more representation. Basically, instead of getting 1 representative on your side, you can get 2. Now, if you don't want to get, this is more of a nice to know, so if you want to skip ahead to this point in the video, you can. But if you're a little curious how gerrymandering works, definitely stick around and I'll explain it to you. But the main thing you need to know about gerrymandering is that you can redraw the lines to essentially favor a political party. So whether it's the Republicans are doing it and drawing the lines so they get more Republican representation, or the Democrats, both parties have done this. And they not only do it at the national level, they also do it at the state levels as well. But all you need to know about gerrymandering is it's this like tricky little thing where you can actually like redraw the lines to benefit your party. So if you're good with that, go ahead and skip ahead. If you want more of an explanation, here we go. I'll explain it. For Wyoming, you can see that, let's just say that Wyoming was just reapportioned, had 2 members. Oh, I'm sorry. We're going to say Wyoming only had 1 member in the House, but enough people moved to Wyoming that they actually got 2 more. So now they have 3. So if I was in charge of the state legislature, because that's who actually does the drawing, and I was a, let's see, if I was a Republican and I wanted to actually gerrymander this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my lines like this. 1, 2, 3. And what that's going to do is it's going to take all the red, because, oh, sorry, I should probably tell you that. The red in this map represents where typically Republicans live in Wyoming. The blue represents where Democrats live. But if I cut that way, what's going to happen is enough of the red Republicans are going to blend into the population of the blue that it actually means that I would be able to get 3 representatives that are Republicans. And that would mean Democrats get 0. Now, if I was a Democrat and I was going to try and redraw this, I'll show you exactly what I would do. I would draw my map to essentially make that a district, boom, and then I would make this a district, boom. Now, there's so much Republican red in Wyoming that there's no way of getting out at least 1, and that's what this district would be. I would just call that District 1. But as you can see, guess what I just squeezed out? 1 and 2. That means that I just got 2 representatives that are going to the House, and only for the Democrats, only 1 Republican. Why, gerrymandered. So as you can see, gerrymandering is kind of like this shady thing where a lot of times I'll try and redraw, just like this original guy did here. He redrew his district, and they kind of made fun of him and just like, look at this kind of wicked thing you're doing, gerrymandering. You're creating this like monster, and that's how a lot of people view gerrymandering. It's almost like this kind of like cheating with the borders. Okay, so let's move on. If you want, you can have some practice with Nevada. See how you would gerrymander Nevada with that challenge. Or you want an even better one? Try Colorado. See if you can gerrymander Colorado. Okay, maybe you just pause the video and go back. Last thing, committees in the House of Representatives. So the House is divided up into smaller committees. A committee is a small number of representatives that make laws based on a topic. So if you try to have all 435 members making a law, it would be crazy. So instead what they do is you essentially have the members get onto these committees, and these committees are the ones that deal with certain types of law based on the topic. So if you're going to do something related to, say, farming and agriculture, guess what? It's going to go to the Agriculture Committee because it's based on that topic. And then the people, let's just say this was the Agriculture Committee. These people, who are all House of Representative members from different states, let's say these guys are from Colorado, these guys are from California, they're from New York, they're from Texas, these guys down here are from Oklahoma. They all get together and they make laws that they will then present to the entire group. And as you can see, if you want to pause the video, you can see that there's a long list of the different committees in the House. So that's it. Thanks so much for following along with the video. We'll get to block 2 next time. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to email us or let us know. And if you have time, don't forget to check out some of those videos on Google Classroom. All right, thanks guys. We'll see you later.